Something kept calling their names from the darkness, using voices that sounded almost right. It started softly, threaded through the trees like a memory trying to surface. Not loud enough to startle, not clear enough to answer. Just the suggestion of sound, air disturbed into syllables that resembled who they were. Lena, it said. She stopped walking. Pine needles whispered under her boots as the others took another step before noticing. The forest swallowed their headlamps at the edges, trunks rising like columns into a ceiling of black. The temperature had dropped again. Her breath fogged in front of her face, though it hadn't been this cold an hour ago. "Did you hear that?" Lena asked. Mark turned, light wobbling. "Hear what?" Before she could answer, the darkness shifted. "Mark," the voice said. His name, shaped correctly, waited with the same clipped softness Lena used when she was tired of arguing with him. He stiffened. "Okay, not funny." "I didn't," Lena started. "Eli," the voice added, closer now, wrong in a different way, too careful, as if it had practiced. Eli laughed, sharp and forced. "You guys are messing with me." No one answered. Their lights trembled as they swept the forest, catching nothing but bark, fern, the pale flash of stone. The trail marker they'd been following. A strip of faded orange ribbon, hung limp from a branch behind them, pointing nowhere useful. They hadn't meant to be out this late. The hike was supposed to be straightforward. Follow the creek, cut through the old logging road, loop back before dusk. But the forest had thickened without them noticing. The trees leaned closer together. Sound didn't travel right. Even their footsteps felt muted, as if the ground were listening. "Lena," the voice said again. This time it came from her left. She turned instinctively, heart knocking against her ribs. "What do you want?" she called, hating the way her voice cracked. Silence answered, then a faint exhale, too wet to be wind, too rhythmic to be leaves. Mark's hand found her arm. His grip was cold. "We should keep moving." They did, faster now. Branches snagged at their clothes. The beam of Eli's flashlight jittered over the path ahead, illuminating a shallow dip in the land where the trees bowed inward. The air pooled there, heavy and damp, smelling faintly of rot. "Eli," the voice said, from behind them. He spun. "Stop saying my name." The sound that followed was almost a laugh. Almost. It rose and fell wrong, like someone imitating breath without needing it. They reached the dip and realized it wasn't part of the trail at all. It was an old structure. Concrete steps swallowed by moss, descending into the earth. A bunker, maybe, or the remnants of a root cellar. The opening yawned black, edges slick with moisture. Cold poured out of it in a steady stream. "No," Lena said immediately. "We're not going in there." "Mark," the voice said, from the dark below. Mark flinched. The voice had his cadence now. The way he stretched vowels. The faint rasp at the back of his throat from years of smoking he'd supposedly quit. "That sounded like you," Eli whispered. "I know," Mark said. "I know." The forest behind them rustled. Not a breeze. Something passing through, displacing space. Shadows shifted where their lights didn't reach, rearranging themselves too smoothly. "Lena," the voice said, softer now. Closer. She backed toward the steps without realizing it. The cold licked at her ankles. "Don't answer it," Eli said. "Whatever it is, it wants us to." "How do you know?" Mark asked. "Because it's learning," Eli said, eyes fixed on the darkness. "Listen." They did. "Lena," the voice said again, but this time it stumbled. The L dragged. The cut short. A correction followed, subtle but unmistakable, like someone clearing their throat and trying again. "Lena," it said, closer to right. "Lena." The temperature dropped sharply. Frost traced the edges of the steps. Their breaths fogged thick and fast, overlapping. "That's not an echo," Lena whispered. "It's practicing." "Mark," the voice said, from somewhere above them now. They all looked up. The trees leaned inward, branches knitting together, forming a canopy dense enough to blot out the stars entirely. Between them, Something moved. Not a shape, but a subtraction. A place where light thinned. Eli, it said, too fast, too eager. Eli backed down a step. It's hurting us. The bunker exhaled again. Warmer air this time. Stale but human warm. Lena, the voice called, from below. It sounded tired now. Convincing. They descended without agreeing to it. Each step down dampened the forest sounds until only their breathing remained. The walls were close, concrete sweating against their shoulders. Their lights cut tunnels through the dark, revealing scratches in the walls, long parallel marks, as if something had dragged itself up and down repeatedly. Mark, the voice said, ahead of them. Mark stopped so abruptly Lena nearly ran into him. The voice was his own now, not close, perfect, the exact pitch he used when he was scared but trying not to show it. Don't, he said aloud. Don't use my voice. A pause. Then gently, why not? Eli gagged. It's asking questions. The corridor opened into a wider chamber. Old equipment lay rusted and collapsed, shapes softened by mold. In the center of the floor, something darker than shadow pooled, breathing shallowly. Lena, it said, from everywhere at once. She felt it then. A pressure behind her eyes, a tug at memories she hadn't offered. The sound of her name wasn't just heard. It was remembered. The way her mother used to say it when she was sick. The way Mark whispered it once, years ago, when he thought she was asleep. You hear us? The thing said, voice blurring, stacking, overlapping. So we learn you. Mark, it said softer. Eli. The darkness in the center rose, unfolding without joints, without edges. It didn't have a face, but it made faces, briefly, incorrectly, impressions pressed outward, then smoothed away. We don't want to hurt you, it said, trying Mark's voice again. Failing. Adjusting. We want to go where you go. Eli bolted. His footsteps slapped wetly against concrete, then cut off with a sharp cry. Eli! Lena screamed. Eli! The thing echoed, delighted now, perfectly. It surged forward, faster than shadow should move. Mark grabbed Lena's hand and ran, the corridor narrowing, twisting impossibly. Voices chased them, hers, his, Eli's, all of them slightly wrong, improving with every repetition. They burst back into the forest, gasping. The night air felt thin, fragile. Mark didn't stop running until his lungs burned. When they finally collapsed, the forest was silent. Too silent. Eli, Lena whispered. Behind them, something stepped out of the bunker entrance. It wore Eli's shape like a suggestion, edges still soft, features aligning as it watched them. When it smiled, it practiced first, pulling at the corners, testing. Lena, it said in Eli's voice, perfect now. The forest ranger warned them not to stay past sundown, but he wouldn't explain why. He said it casually, like a reminder about locking your car or packing out trash. One hand rested on the door of his truck. The other drummed against the metal as if he were eager to leave. His eyes never quite met theirs. Instead, they kept drifting toward the tree line, where the forest pressed close to the gravel turnout in a way that felt deliberate. Gate closes at dusk, he added. You don't want to be inside when it gets dark. Mara laughed, a soft, reflexive sound. We're just camping. One night. The ranger's mouth twitched, not a smile. That's what everyone says. He hesitated, then climbed into his truck. The engine started immediately like he'd kept it running. As he pulled away, his headlights swept across the trees, and for just a moment, the shadows seemed to lean toward the road. They stood there longer than necessary after the truck disappeared, the forest breathing around them. Leaves whispered overhead, though there was no wind. Somewhere deep inside the woods, something knocked twice, wood against wood, slow and hollow. It's just a ranger being dramatic, Jonah said. He hoisted his pack higher on his shoulders, forcing cheer into his voice. Probably trying to scare off teenagers. Mara nodded, though unease had already settled between her shoulder blades. The air felt cooler under the canopy, damp and heavy, carrying the smell of soil and old leaves. Every sound seemed close, too close, like the forest was compressing around them as they followed the narrow trail to the campsite. The site itself was ordinary enough. A cleared circle, a fire ring choked with ash, a picnic table scarred by years of pocket knives and weather. Sunlight filtered through the branches in thin, dusty beams. Birds moved above them, restless, darting from tree to tree without settling. They pitched the tent quickly. Jonah kept glancing at the sky, gauging the light. "We've got time," he said, more to himself than to Mara. As the sun slid lower, the forest changed in subtle ways. The temperature dropped faster than it should have. The birds went quiet all at once, as if someone had closed a door. Even the insects seemed muted, their droning replaced by a low, distant rustle that came and went like breath. Mara noticed the first sound near the creek, a dragging noise, rhythmic and wet, like something being pulled across mud. When she asked Jonah if he heard it, it stopped. "Probably an elk," he said, "or a branch." But he kept his knife within reach after that. They ate in near silence as dusk bled into the woods. The fire crackled, throwing uneven light across the trees. Beyond its reach, darkness gathered thickly, not the soft blur of night but a hard wall that swallowed detail. Shadows didn't flicker the way they should. They stretched and held, clinging to the trunks. Then the knocking started again, closer this time. 3 slow strikes, spaced too evenly to be random. Jonah stood. "Hey!" he called, feeling foolish the moment the word left his mouth. "Anyone there?" The forest answered with stillness. Mara felt a prickle along her arms. The air had gone cold enough that her breath fogged faintly, though it was late summer. She realized the smell had changed, too. Less green, more metallic, like wet stone and old blood. They extinguished the fire together. Darkness rushed in to fill the space it left. That was when they heard footsteps. Not heavy, crashing steps, but careful ones. Weight shifting. Leaves pressed down slowly, deliberately, circling the campsite just beyond sight. Jonah turned in place, flashlight cutting weak tunnels through the trees. Each beam ended abruptly, swallowed by shadow. "Mara," he whispered, "get in the tent." The footsteps stopped. For a heartbeat, everything was quiet again. Then a voice spoke from the darkness, low and wrong, like someone forcing air through a damaged throat. "You should have gone." It sounded close enough to touch. Jonah shouted and swung the light toward the voice. The beam caught movement, something tall hunched between 2 trees. Its shape kept slipping, refusing to settle into anything recognizable. Where its face should have been, there was only a suggestion of features, smoothed and pale, like bark stripped of its texture. More shapes emerged as the light moved. Not many. Enough. They didn't rush. They waited, patient, as if they knew time was on their side. Mara ran. Branches tore at her arms as she sprinted down the trail, Jonah behind her, breath ragged. The forest no longer felt passive. Roots snagged at their feet, shadows reached where there should have been empty air. The trail twisted, unfamiliar, looping back on itself. Their headlamps flickered, dimming with each step. Ahead, the ranger station appeared through the trees, its windows dark, its porch light dead. They pounded on the door anyway. Jonah screamed for help until his voice broke. Something answered from the woods. Not words. A sound like many throats trying to remember how to speak. The door creaked open. The ranger stood inside, lantern raised. His face was pale, eyes rimmed red with exhaustion. He looked past them, into the forest, and his shoulders sagged with something like relief. "You made it," he said softly. Then, quieter still, "Mostly." Mara turned. Jonah wasn't beside her anymore. Behind them, the forest shifted. The shapes withdrew, melting back into bark and shadow, leaving the clearing empty and still. The ranger closed the door and set the lantern down. Its light revealed deep scratches in the wood, layered over older ones. Names carved and crossed out, dates spanning decades. "They don't like witnesses," he said. But they honor trades. Mara's scream echoed uselessly in the small room. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls, the forest knocked twice, slow, satisfied.